Welcome to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm Ali Maxwell. It's time for your weekend football punting preview. I've got Adrian Clarke with me, former footballer, current tactical analyst and pundit and broadcaster and radio host and podcast guest. But we've got Mark O'Hare from We Love Betting as well. He rounds off this unholiest of trinities. This week is Responsible Gambling Week. The objective behind Responsible Gambling Week is to spread the message around the dangers of gambling, to drive awareness of them, and to try and talk to punters and teach punters how to gamble responsibly, to offer tools that are available to help gamblers all year round and advice and support to those who need it. A few key points, I think, to get across from us. We are recreational punters, not pro punters, and we sort of come at it from the starting point of only bet what you can afford to lose. If your relationships with friends and family is being affected by gambling in any way, then you know that you've gone too far and it's time potentially to find out if there's any advice, any support that you can get. Not chasing losses, not increasing your stakes on a whim. These are the sorts of things that we think are quite important. So to find out more about this and Responsible Gambling Week in general, you can go to responsiblegamblinguk.org/about for more information, for all the information needed. We've got loads and loads of big, exciting games in the Premier League this weekend. None more so than Liverpool against Manchester City. These games are so exciting, and we head into it with Liverpool 6 points clear ahead of City. It's a huge fixture this weekend, and that's where we're going to start. It's at Anfield, and Liverpool are 2.65 on the Matchbook site as we record on Thursday morning, with Man City at 2.64, the closest I can remember it being since we've done this podcast. The draw 3.72, Liverpool +0 on the handicap 1.98, Man City -0, 1.97. Over 2.75 goals available at 1.877. And the under 2.75 goals at 2.04. It's so tasty. We're going to spend a bit of time on it. Adrian, I'd like to start with the tactical side of things, I suppose. My question is, what do games between Klopp's Liverpool and Pep's Man City tend to look like? How do they play out in general?
It's a good question, because not always the same, if truth be told. History suggests, not always, but across the last couple of years, history suggests the first meeting of the season between these two is significantly cagier than the second meeting. So I think that is a point to consider when thinking about the game. There's a long way to go in the season. And you've just read out the stats there. Liverpool protecting a 6-point lead. Manchester City know that they can't really afford to lose. So I think it's going to be a very tactical affair, actually. How they're going to play it, actually.
As a player, sorry to interrupt, but I'm interested to know your perspective on this from your playing days. Mm-hmm. Psychology of football is so fascinating and so complicated to delve deeply into. But if you're the team 6 points clear, I'm interested, you said Man City can't afford to lose, and that's absolutely true. But then a part of me was thinking Liverpool almost subconsciously will feel like a draw, or they can't really, well, they can afford to lose, but they are defending something, if you know what I mean. They're defending their lead at the top of the table, and whether that might play in subconsciously to the way that they play the game, maybe a little more with the shackles on.
Yeah, look, players just will go out there and play, but ordinarily they will go according to the instructions of their managers. And I think ahead of big games, from experience, when I've been involved in big games, not as big as this, I have to admit, nowhere near. But managers tend to work overtime, and maybe they can fill the players with a little bit more information. It can become how do we stop them rather than how can we hurt them? And that's the way that I'm looking at this game, for the reasons that we've both just outlined. Liverpool got something to protect. City know defeat puts them not out of the race, but almost. So I do predict a very tactical affair, quite close, a big focus on defence, especially given that Liverpool are probably going to be without Matip, and that Manchester City may now be without Ederson, who was injured in the Champions League. So look, I'm not going to say it's another 0-0 like it was last year, but I'm looking towards a draw, maybe a 1-1. Little stat for you: the most popular result in the Premier League this season is 1-1. 15% of matches have finished that way. It's way ahead, actually, of the next closest, which is a home win, 1-0. So I think Liverpool 1, Manchester City 1 is where I'm seeing this one go.
There was definitely a few years when I was a much younger punter where if there was a big game on the weekend, I would just back 1-1 because it felt, purely anecdotally at least, that big games just finished 1-1. And you always, if you watched it, you always felt a little deflated that you hadn't got more out of the game. But that there's almost certainly no statistical backing to that. So please don't put anything to it. But Adrian's thinking a 1-1 could be on offer here. Mark, from a punting perspective, a betting angle, what do you think might be the way to go here?
Yeah, I'm quite happy that Adrian's kind of laid out his idea of how the game might pan out, because I'm coming from a very similar angle too. We've talked many times about these two being the big two, and streets and miles ahead of the rest of the pack, really. And games between them are so pivotal. People love to look at where titles were won and lost, but I think last year you can make a case for the two games between the two teams is where the title was won and lost. City picked up 4 points against Liverpool, and that proved decisive. 0-0 at Anfield. Mahrez missed that penalty. It could have been by a wider margin, really, but that's Liverpool's only defeat now in the Premier League since the start of last season, which is quite astounding, really. Yet they started the week as underdogs, around 2.8. They went off 2.9 for this game last season, and that's despite not having Fabinho or Trent Alexander-Arnold playing. City didn't have De Bruyne, in fairness, but they did have Laporte, and obviously a much better defence. And it was the 16th time now in a row they failed to win at Anfield in the Premier League. Just one league win in 28 trips to Anfield in league football for City. So, I'm finding it hard to see how City deserve to be favourites, considering the circumstances coming into this match. As I say, we look into where the title was won and lost last year, but Adrian was bang on. The first game between the two ended 0-0, just 13 shots in total. Only 4 of those were on target. And as I completely agree, I think a draw wouldn't be the worst result for either of these two teams. I think
neither of these teams have been, and this is all relative to them obviously being the best teams in the land and possibly the world, but defensively, it seems to me maybe not at top level this season, both of them.
Yeah, I would agree on that, and that's the thing really for if you're looking towards the goals markets, which I have been, because I do think this is an opportunity to swim against the tide, because the common conception will be that there's going to be goals in this game because of the quality of players on show in attacking areas, plus those defensive flaws. The fact that Ederson might be out as well. We've already seen a move towards Liverpool this week, and a move getting with goals again, really, on the back of that, really. But I actually think that under 3 goals, at around 1.8-ish, for example, is a great angle to take. Only loses if there's 4 or more goals in this. Everyone's going to be looking towards the goals angles because of those defensive flaws. But actually, since Liverpool became a force under Klopp, 7 of the 9 games between these two teams featured no more than 3 goals, one of which was the 5-0 at the Etihad when Liverpool had Mane sent off in the first half and collapsed. That was back in September 2017. They've only lost 5 games since then. I'm aware of the data driving these prices, which, in Premier League terms, City are far and away the best so far this season, despite what the league table says. And I would say that Liverpool probably haven't been as good in both boxes compared to last season. But I'm on the same boat really with Adrian here. I think it's going to be a very tight tactical battle. Pep, notoriously struggles against Klopp. That's been well documented. Aguero's never scored in 7 games at Anfield. City have those issues at centre half, and now Ederson too. The fact they're in Milan on Wednesday night rather than Liverpool, who had a stroll against Genk on Tuesday, it all kind of adds up here to Liverpool. And let's not forget they're unbeaten in 45 Premier League games at Anfield. They've lost 1 Premier League match in 50. And at the start of the week, we could have got 1.75, 1.8-ish on Liverpool with a quarter goal start on the Asian handicap. It just made no sense to me, despite those underlying numbers. You're essentially getting money if the game ends in a draw or a Liverpool win. That's obviously moved now more towards a kind of balanced game in terms of a each of 2 line. But I still think the value is with Liverpool and with opposing goals. Not just between these two, sorry. I should say that I looked at both of their records against the big 6 teams since the start of last season, and only 7 of the 20 games combined have featured 4 or more goals. So everything to me is pointing towards a reasonably low-scoring game with Liverpool on top.
Sounds like you gobbled up some of that early value, Mark, so thanks for that. Wolves and Aston Villa is where we go next, and it's 1.93 for the home side, Wolves, on the weekend. Aston Villa, 4.35, and the draw, 3.64. All these prices on the Matchbook site, matchbook.com, as we record on Thursday morning. Wolves minus half a goal, 1.92, and Villa plus half a goal, 2.03. Over 2.5 goals is 1.94, and under 2.5 goals, 1.98. As well as an obvious derby aspect of this game, it feels like both teams need to pick up wins at some point. The Wolves have this slightly bizarre 2 wins, 7 draws, 2 defeats record, which sees them, mid-table, but no better. And Villa have struggled against the top half teams, and they've had quite a few games against the good teams in the division, and generally have been picking up points against teams around them, though. I think their fans are feeling that they've been a little bit hard done by so far, various qualms about VAR and other decisions going against them. But Mark, I wanted to ask what your favourite punting angle here ahead of the Wolves-Villa game is.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Ali. I've gone a bit different, really. I think you're right in everything you said there. Both teams are actually playing pretty well recently and not probably picking up the points they deserved. Wolves were excellent at the Emirates last week. Villa gave Liverpool a good scare at the Villa Park. I know that the stats would suggest otherwise, but that's down to game state and Villa taking an early lead. And then obviously going to have a major onslaught from Liverpool. But they still carved out some decent counter-attacking opportunities. Probably could have got more from that game if Jack Grealish had played. His composure on the ball, delivery, ability to draw fouls, and probably give Villa a bit more breathing space in that final third of the game probably could have been crucial, really. But they are settling into the season pretty well after quite a punishing start. They've had a very difficult away schedule with Spurs, City, and Arsenal. Gave all 3 teams plenty to think about, and we're actually in the top 8 in terms of expected goals from open play, as well as shots from inside the penalty area, and that's reflected by the fact they've scored in all but 3 games this season. Wolves, as we probably expected, have regressed a little bit from last year, probably due to the Europa League duty. Only won once after a Europa League game. They've obviously got Bratislava and Molineux on Thursday night. Draws have held them back, but I'm actually kind of taking a different approach than I normally would for this kind of game, because I actually think there's a great opportunity to utilise Matchbook's exchange, because we can back Villa at 4.4 to win this game. I don't see any value in Wolves at odds on, but I'd be more inclined to be with Villa at odds against, but with the half-goal start. But yeah, if we back Villa at 4.4, and then we can potentially trade out of that position when that price contracts if Villa make a good start. And if you look at the season so far, these 2 teams are chalk and cheese in terms of how they start and end games. Villa have dropped 11 points from winning positions. Wolves have scored 12 of their 14 goals after half-time. Villa have scored the first goal in 6 of their 11 games. Wolves have conceded first in 8 of 11. Villa have conceded the fewest first-half goals, but conceded the most second-half goals. They'd be joint top if games finished at half-time. They've led at half-time in 6 of those 11. Wolves have earned the joint fewest points and trailed at half-time in 6 of 11 games. Then in the second half, only Leicester have won more points than Wolves. We've won 6 of 11 second halves, and Villa have lost 6 of 11 second halves. So if you follow those trends, I know there's a small sample, but there's quite a lot there to sort of digest. If Villa do take an early goal, take an early lead, then get straight back on the Matchbook exchange, lay it off, and you've guaranteed yourself a nice little payday. Or if you're brave enough, ride it out and see how Villa go. But it's an alternative approach.
It's a Mark O'Hare special is what it is. Absolutely love that. Adrian, you saw Wolves against Arsenal last week. That 2 wins, 7 draws, 2 defeats record. When you have a team that's racking up the draws to that extent, it's always interesting to work out, are the majority of those winning draws or potentially snatching a point from games that they might otherwise lose? Where do you think this Wolves team is at in that sense? Do you think they're closer to turning some of those into wins or potentially going the other way?
Based on what I saw last weekend at Emirates Stadium, closer to wins. They were very impressive. Both teams have played pretty well, I think, for spells of this season. But I see a gradual improvement in Wolves. And I'll tell you where I see the biggest improvement, and that's in the forward players. I thought Diogo Jota and Raul Jimenez started the season a bit flat. After a really bright pre-season, weirdly enough, they're finding their feet again. Jota was excellent against Arsenal, and Jimenez scored the goal, of course, and they were a real handful. And I think that they can cause Aston Villa problems in this game. I think out wide as well, Wolves have always been strong, haven't they, with the flying wing backs? They use the full width of the pitch. And I also commentated on Villa at City. And poor old Guibert, okay, look, he's good going forward, and it was a tough test for him up against Sterling and Silva. But he absolutely got tied in knots. And I don't think he's a great defender, the Villa right back. So I think in wide areas, Wolves can get joy. The front two are playing well enough to hurt them. I actually had looked into similar numbers in terms of how Villa tail off and how Wolves get stronger as games go along. So yeah, look, the way I would go at it potentially might be a half-time draw and Wolves to take it in the second half. Incidentally, 9 of their 11 games, Wolves have had under 2.5 goals. So they've not been involved in many thrillers so far. They're pretty tight at the back. So no, I think Wolves to win, probably with a clean sheet, is where I'll be looking to go for this one. But yeah, I've got a slight fancy for Wolves, but at odds on, I understand it's not great value.
Okay, let's move on to Leicester and Arsenal. This is the evening game on Saturday at Leicester. They are 2.1 and Arsenal 3.6 with the draw 3.75. Leicester minus half a goal available at 2.08 and Arsenal plus half a goal at 1.86. Over 3 goals is even money and under 3 goals 1.93. Adrian, first of all, good evening. Secondly, you always give us interesting insight on Arsenal. It's been a difficult period for the club at the moment, and this fixture doesn't make things any easier. Leicester away. What are your thoughts on this game?
My thoughts are that Leicester City are the exact type of team that Arsenal do not want to face at the moment. Arsenal are struggling in terms of moving the ball around the pitch. They're not playing with any great cohesion or confidence. They're in possession, for want of a better word, they've been a bit clunky. It hasn't been the kind of Arsenal that we expect. And we know that Leicester City are one of the best sides at turning the ball over inside the opposition half. Scored 5 or 6 goals from turnovers already. And Arsenal, by the way, have conceded from several turnovers as well. So that frightens me as a follower of Arsenal a little bit. Off the ball, they're too stretched. There's no compactness. The defence is too deep. I think David Luiz and Socrates, particularly David Luiz, wants to give himself a bit more space. And that is leaving a great big hole in midfield because Arsenal aren't pressing properly. They're not sitting back as a unit. It's all a little bit fractured in terms of their work between the 3 departments. That's how it's been of late anyway. So I can see Leicester getting a lot of joy here. It's a game that I can't back Arsenal in. They've conceded goals from long balls, from through balls, from counters and turnovers this season. And when I think of Leicester, that's exactly what they're all about. And we all know that they're in great shape at the moment. So and I think about the game last year, Tielemans and Maddison in those 2 attacking midfield positions. Arsenal had no answer to them, and Vardy's runs as well, particularly off of David Luiz. He's got a couple of yards pace on him. So look, it would be Leicester all the way for me. It hurts me to say that, but Arsenal are going to have to buck the trend and play significantly better with and without the ball to even get a draw in this game.
Really interesting. Mark, from what you've seen in terms of a punting angle, does that align with what Adrian says? Because, of course, Leicester, so impressive, but 2.1, it seems, fairly short. They don't seem big to me.
Yeah, I agree, Ali. I thought it was a really fascinating game. Fascinating game last week, actually, as well at Crystal Palace, because for me, that was a bit of a barometer for Leicester. Could they pass that test? Are they good enough to be considered real, genuine, not just top 6 candidates, but top 4 candidates? And they passed it with flying colours. They now are genuine top 4 candidates. If you look at the market, they're odds on in places to finish in the top 4, which is remarkable, really. But I think that's kind of counted into the price, really. They were 2.6 to win this game in April, now 2.1. They haven't been that short since short at home against any top half team, not just a Big 6 team, since they won the title in 2016. And if you look at Arsenal have only been a bigger price away from home in the Premier League under Unai Emery, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea and Spurs. So it does feel short, but at the same time, I'm kind of going to get on board with it because it's odds against, and the way Arsenal are kind of sludging from week to week, it just makes total sense to me. I know price is everything, but I find it very hard to kind of find any other angle here. But be with Leicester, they have been very clinical, remarkably clinical. The most clinical team in England this season. They're scoring with every 5.5 shots. Vardy in particular as well. But they'll get chances here. There's no doubt about that. Arsenal were ranked against Sheffield United. Let Leeds slip against Palace and Wolves in the last 2 Premier League games. Their goals against Palace came via corners. Wolves are very unfortunate just to have a point. Opened them up, effortlessly, pretty consistently too. And Leicester have the players to do damage here. What's most alarming for me really with Arsenal was last weekend they failed to have a shot on target after the 32nd minute, despite starting with Ozil, Lacazette and Aubameyang. Away from home, they've collected 3 points from 12 trips to top half teams under Emery in the Premier League. 2 clean sheets in 24 away from home. Winless in 21 trips to top 6 teams, losing 8 of the last 10. All the underlying data suggests that they're a bang average mid-table team this season. Leicester absolutely flying under Brendan Rodgers. So I'm well aware the price is very, very short. They were 2.72 at home to Spurs earlier this season. But, the way the market is panning out at the moment, Leicester are going to be a top 4 team. Arsenal certainly aren't going to be. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Hurts me. It really does to hear you say that, Mark. But it's hard to disagree that the form is mid-table. By the way, away from home, they've only won the once, Newcastle, on the opening weekend. They've only actually managed double figures in terms of shots in matches on the road in the Premier League once this season. So they've really not been dominating or controlling matches in the way that Arsenal used to at home or away. So you talk about Leicester being clinical. If Arsenal are to get anything out of this game, and you can't write them off completely with Aubameyang and Lacazette, but they're going to have to be clinical because the recent history says that they're probably only going to have 8, 9, 10 shots max in this match. So they're going to have to be ruthless inside the final third.
Okay, Newcastle and Bournemouth, our last Premier League game to preview, and Newcastle are 2.68 with Bournemouth 2.9 and the draw 3.3 on the Matchbook site. Newcastle +0, 1.89, Bournemouth -0, 2.04. Over 2.5 goals is 2.08 and the under 1.83. Mark, that over 2.5 goal line for a Bournemouth game, 2.08. What has happened to them? We potentially need to adapt our sort of automatic overs punt on Bournemouth games because their last 4 games have been very, very low in terms of goals. Is that just a blip? Is this something that's going to continue, do you think? And how do you think they match up to Newcastle in this game?
Well, firstly, whoever's chosen this game to be covered on the podcast needs a good, long, hard look at themselves because it's probably the worst game on the card this weekend. But my immediate notes are actually to oppose goals, which is unthinkable really with a Bournemouth team. I'd scribbled down sort of 1.7 as a 1.7 to 1.75 as a tissue price here for unders. So anything above 1.75 is a bit of a bet really, which it's more. Well, it is Bournemouth based as well because they have changed their attack. Jefferson Lerma and Philip Billing in central midfield, offering a much more solid base. They've been certainly more conservative in their approach, but Lerma's going to be banned for this game, which is a blow. I expect Lewis Cook to kind of fill that space, but it's more based around Newcastle really. If you watch last week's game against West Ham, you probably think backing unders is silly. They had 9 shots on target in that game, scored 3 goals, could have had a catalogue of more goals as well, but West Ham were absolutely appalling in that game. And the question really is, how good were Newcastle and how bad were West Ham? Well, I'm leaning more towards West Ham were dreadful. So the reason that being, it was the first time this season Newcastle has scored more than 1 goal. 5 of their 9 goals this year have come via defenders. They're averaging fewer than 5 shots inside the penalty area, sit bottom of all the attacking metrics in the league. But actually Bournemouth are sitting in the bottom 4 with them as well, across all those attacking metrics too. Newcastle's numbers are probably skewed because they had to play 5 of the big 6 plus Leicester and Wolves in their first 11 games, which is obviously going to affect their numbers. But they have been getting decent-ish results. Their only defeats since mid-August have been away at Liverpool, Leicester and Chelsea, which reflects on the reasonably promising work that Steve Bruce is doing there. Just 4 defeats and 5 unbeaten games at St James's Park recently. So the draw is obviously a big runner here, but it has to be with unders here because 7 of Newcastle's 11 have gone under. At St James's Park, all 5 have gone under. 3 of them have gone under 1.5, an average of 1.2 goals per game. And obviously Bournemouth's improvement in defensive areas, but also the kind of, I wouldn't say the negativity, but the lack of attacking ambition, which is shown in those underlying numbers in terms of shots attempted, XG from open play, and all the locations based around shots now for Eddie Howe's team have been pretty poor too. And you look at their last 4 games, all have gone unders, produced a grand total of 2 goals, 1 scored, 1 conceded. Fabian Schär's back for Newcastle as well, which will help them defensively. So, yeah, it's not a game I'm particularly looking forward to, but if you're looking for a bet, there is, for me, slight value in unders.
Okay, not a game to be looking forward to. The worst game in the Premier League card this weekend. I don't pick the games, I'd like to make that clear, so we can blame those back at the matchbook base. Adrian, anything to add on this game before we move quickly on?
Yeah, well, the Cherries away form is all right. You know, they won at Villa, they won at Southampton, they drew at Watford. I would lean towards Bournemouth here because they've got the confidence of clean sheets. Remember, they beat Manchester United last time out. I think that will have lifted them. And I just feel, even though the form book would indicate that someone like Callum Wilson's a bit out of form, it's not really happening for him. He doesn't tend to go on long runs without scoring goals. So I just got a feeling that King and Wilson might not have a field day, but might be able to pick off Newcastle United in this game, who might see this as a winnable match. Therefore, they might show slightly more attacking ambition than they have done in recent times. And would I back Joe Linton, Sam Maximin and Almiron to score goals? Not really. But I would back Bournemouth to pick them off potentially on the counter. So no, look, I'll be looking towards Bournemouth picking up another good away win against lowly opposition.
Okay, in terms of those Premier League games, a quick recap. I think for Man City, Liverpool, we felt like under 3 goals was a decent play, potentially in terms of the match itself, a draw, a 1-1 draw if you want to play the correct score market. Villa Wolves, we've got a trade to make here. We're going to back Villa at 4.4 pre-game, and then with a view to trading out if and when they start very quickly, Wolves, such slow starters. Leicester at home to Arsenal, we couldn't really see past them, 2.1 the price as we record. And Newcastle, Bournemouth, we're going unders there with maybe a leaning towards Bournemouth if you like what you heard from Adrian Clarke. Now we're on to the underdog pick. This is a £10 mythical for you guys, but not for people who haven't already signed up to Matchbook, because Matchbook are offering a free £10 risk-free bet to anyone that signs up to the site today. But I'm giving you guys a mythical £10. Money back if it loses, but the caveat is you have to choose a long shot, an outsider. And the pressure's on you, if I'm honest, Adrian, because Mark is doing pretty well with these so far. Last week, he told us to back Frankfurt against Bayern Munich at 7.5, and they won 5-1.
Wow. I'm just going to applaud that. That is outstanding.
The week before, he was unlucky not to have a winner with Cagliari, so I'm looking forward to hearing what Mark has for us, but we'll start with you, Adrian.
Oh, just forget about me. Let's just hear what Mark says. FA Cup. I mean, that's where I think that there'll be a lot of value. I've got 3. I'll pick one. Morden and Tiptree. Keep your eye on Morden and Tiptree at Leyton Orient, because they've got a 100% record in their division. Now, they're a lot lower than Leyton Orient, but they haven't been playing well under the new manager, the O's. So Morden and Tiptree at a big price might be worth a long shot. I also like the look of Bromley, top of the National League, going away to Bristol Rovers. I think when you're at home, and I've been in this position, guys, when you're at home in the FA Cup to a non-league team, you're on an absolute hide into nothing, and you can be more nervous than you would be going away from home. So there are a couple. I'm going to flip that on his head though. My pick would be Gateshead at home to Oldham. Now, Oldham away from home, not that good. They concede 2 per game on the road. They're a slightly flaky side. They've got quite a lot of overseas players. Now, I don't want to cast any aspersions on foreigners, but maybe it might be a shock to their system going away to Gateshead, who I'm sure will get really stuck into them. They're strong defensively, Gateshead in the National League North. So for me, Gateshead to beat Oldham.
Mark, you've done very well out of your £10 risk-free bet so far. Where's it going this week?
Yeah, not as conclusive for me this week, especially after Wednesday night. But Sheffield United away at Tottenham, anything bigger than 5-1 will appeal to me. Any EFL fans will know all about Chris Wilder and Sheffield United. So it's great to see them earning respect now in the Premier League after kind of being written off at the start of the season. been absolutely delighted with their attacking approach and their attitude to these matches, unfazed by bigger teams. We've seen that when they played Liverpool. Only lost one away game in 2019 as well, which is the joint fewest across all 4 divisions alongside Liverpool. I appreciate that straddles the Championship, but it's a very impressive record, probably their best effort of the season last week against Burnley. I think they've arguably put in just one poor performance since promotion, conceded the fewest goals, kept 5 clean sheets, and they're ahead of Spurs across all the attacking metrics and defensive metrics. Spurs languishing comfortably mid-table, in the bottom half actually of the Premier League, amongst the league leaders for chances conceded. Just the one Premier League clean sheet this year. Had to go to Belgrade as well on Wednesday, and they've got a 3 p.m. start on Saturday. And I think results have completely masked their home performances. The 4-0 didn't reflect the flow of the game against Palace. They were in plenty of trouble against Villa on the opening day before pulling clear. Were second best at home to Watford not long ago. Lost to Newcastle there. Somehow squeezed out a win against Southampton as well at home. So whilst the win against Red Star will obviously fill them with confidence, it's a very quick turnaround to come back and play a Sheffield United team who, as we all know, will be absolutely bang up for this, well set up, well organised, will make things very difficult for them. So, Sheffield United.
Okay, nice. Just to reiterate that for new customers only, Matchbook are offering a £10 risk-free bet. If your first bet on site loses, Matchbook will refund your stake up to a maximum of £10. Bets must be placed within 7 days of signing up, and ACCA bets do not qualify for this promotion. You must be over 18 and head to offer.matchbook.com for all the T's and C's. Any other business, gents? Anything across Europe or in the EFL? Mark, we'll start with you. What's catching your eye?
Yeah, Saturday night, Lille host Metz. Lille lost 4-1 in midweek to Valencia, pretty much ending their Champions League hopes for progression. Been really unfortunate in that group with a better team against Ajax, better team against Valencia a fortnight to go. Played really well for the most part of Tuesday night before kind of getting picked off on the counter-attack late on. But, their head coach, Christian Galtier, is a wily old character in French football. He has them absolutely on it when they're playing at home. Their record at home is unbelievable, really. They're a knocking bet at the price to win the match, but take the minus 0.75 on the Asian handicap, closer to 1.85, because their record at the Stade PMY is just formidable. 18 wins from 25 there since the start of last season. 16 points from 18 there this season. Scored at least twice in 5 of those 6 games. Their performance data makes them the 3rd best team in France. And as for Metz, they've just been promoted, lost half of their games this season, lost 4 of 6 away, conceding twice in 4 of those, scoring only twice. We're behind at half-time in 5 of those. But the biggest story for Metz really is their defensive midfielder, Kevin and Doram, and left-back Manuel Sabit were involved in a high-speed car accident last Sunday. Reports suggesting the car was travelling at 180 kilometres per hour. Sabit is rumoured to have lost a feeling in his legs. So it's an extremely serious situation. Obviously, the news surrounding Metz has been all centred around that, and playing away to one of the best teams in France at the weekend is surely not a good position to be in. I don't think the market has really caught up with that news. And I think Lille will be out for revenge after their midweek defeat. So home win there.
Okay, and Adrian, any other business for you?
Yeah, I've got a cheeky. Well, it's one for the music fans. A festival double, Leeds and Reading. So let's go for Leeds and Reading in a double. Leeds are at home to Blackburn. I was really impressed actually with Leeds last weekend. They wiped the floor with QPR. Slightly tweaked system from Bielsa, and I would make them overwhelming favourites to see off Blackburn, who aren't brilliant on the road, and Reading have started better than most people expected under Mark Bowen, and Luton, for me, just concede too many goals. They're capable of winning on the road, Luton. We've seen it already this season, but I would go with Leeds and Reading as I know the Championship's tough to bet on, but those are the 2 big home wins I fancy.
It certainly is very, very difficult to punt on the Championship, and part of the reason why we love covering it so much. Gentlemen, your best bets of the weekend. We've spoken about all sorts from the Premier League and elsewhere. Mark, what are you most bullish about?
Yeah, it's that Lille bet, Lille minus 3/4 on the Asian handicap. 18 wins from 25 at home, playing a newly promoted Metz team in turmoil off the field. So home win there.
Adrian, some excellent analysis today. What do you feel strongest about?
Cheers. Well, I'm going to go out away from one of the games that we've picked, actually. and it's a slightly unusual one, so the price might reflect this. Southampton to beat Everton, because I'm going at this completely from a footballer psyche here. They've just been spanked 9-0 in their last home game. And before that, I think Chelsea whipped them at home. Pride has to kick in here. And what I saw at City was a much better organised Southampton team. And I think the fire is in their bellies again. Everton's away form is pitiful. They've lost 4 games. They've lost at Bournemouth, Brighton, Burnley, Villa. Barely scored a goal. I think Southampton will repair a little bit of the damage in front of their own fans and beat Everton this weekend. So I'm going with that one.
Brilliant. Well, we've had an insight into footballers' psyche, punting theory, stats, analysis, everything you could possibly want ahead of the weekend. It's been the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. We will be back soon with more episodes and hope you enjoy your weekend.